Good afternoon and welcome to the December meeting of Coventry and Warwickshire Champions. My name's Adam Dent. I work for Advent Communications, a media and PR firm based here in Coventry and Warwickshire but operating across the UK and internationally. The last time you joined us back in October, we were based at Vitsu in Leamington. Today we're at the UKBIC Industrialisation Centre next to Coventry Airport. Both of them mould-breaking organisations in their own way, one 6 decades old, one so new. If you were sitting here with us, you can almost smell the paintwork. Again, we are being streamed live, so hopefully for you, it's an hour of being entertained and informed, and for us, it's an hour of holding in our waistlines. This year, of most difficult years by anybody's estimation, has been one that's seen the Champions Network go from strength to strength. We're very grateful for all of you for contributing as you have done over the past 12 months, and hopefully you found these sessions, as well as the Champions' other activity, extremely useful. We aim to bring you interesting, valuable and relevant speakers who can tell you what's going on here in Coventry and Warwickshire and bring you up to date with the latest developments. Several of you tuning in today are doing so for the first time, so thank you for that. Several of you doing so from abroad, so thank you again. If at the end of this you've liked what you've heard and what you've seen and would like to become a permanent champion, please do contact Nick Erskine. His details are on the website. Nick manages the Champions programme, which is organised through the auspices of the Coventry and Warwickshire Local Enterprise Partnership. But these sessions are designed, the whole reason that we went to stream was to make them interactive. So please do tweet away, if you could do tonight, using the hashtag ChampsDEC, ChampsDEC. Please also have a look at our Instagram feed and also keep abreast of developments through our LinkedIn page as well. It's easy to be interactive tonight. If you are on YouTube and you have to be signed into YouTube, you will see a chat facility on the right of your screens. Please do fire through those questions, but also put them through on Twitter, again using hashtag ChampsDEC, and they will be relayed to our speakers, and we'll endeavour to answer every question that we can tonight. Tonight we have 4 speakers, each of them relaying a strong and unique story. We're going to hear from our host in a moment, from UKBIC in the form of Managing Director Jeff Pratt, to a young engineer who's making her way in the automotive world, to a man bringing 60 jobs to our region in a slightly newer industry, and finally from one of the most powerful women in global automotive, who is a Coventry lady herself, started in Coventry, now based abroad, and we'll bring you details of that later on. Coventry and Warwickshire won the right to host the £130 million UKBIC when it triumphed over 7 other regions who were competing to get this facility here. It's now open, it's not quite operational until the end of the year, and in a moment we're going to hear from its Managing Director, Jeff Pratt. Jeff, I was going to say welcome, but thank you for hosting us here today.
You're very welcome, Adam, and thanks for inviting us along to the interview.
No. we've just seen the video there. For people who have read the initials and seen the words but not quite know what they mean, for a layperson, give us the elevator pitch. What is UKBIC and what does it do?
Okay, I'll start by explaining a little bit about what the government's trying to do, putting UKBIC into the UK. So UKBIC is part of the Faraday Battery Challenge, which is a 318 million investment by UK government into developing a battery industry in the UK. The reason that's so important is because all countries are now phasing out internal combustion engines. So we need to develop a thriving battery industry in the UK. The Faraday Battery Challenge is in three parts. It's about 90 million into research and development in some of the key universities around the country. It's about 90 million into additional collaborative R&D projects which are managed through Innovate UK, and it's 130 million for this facility. Across the three pillars, it gives the UK the ability to take initial research in those universities, develop that research into products through R&D programs, and get those products to market through the Industrialisation Centre, because a lot of companies can't afford 130 million to get an initial product to market. Once they've proved that product or proved that product in the market, then they can get the investment to go on and build their own facilities and factories.
So for those who don't know, this isn't a wholesale manufacturer of batteries. This is, if I think I've got a product that can be developed, you can prove that it works, it's practicality, it's fit for purpose, but I would then at the end of it go away and manufacture it elsewhere.
Absolutely. I mean, what I call this facility is a manufacturing development facility. So the equipment in here, it isn't lab equipment. I mean, this facility itself is about the size of 3 football pitches, so it's quite a sized facility. The equipment in here is the same equipment as you would see in any large manufacturing battery plant, any large-scale manufacturing battery plant. But we use it to run prototype projects and for initial manufacture for companies to prove the market. Yeah. So it's not a full-scale manufacturing plant.
And why do you think we want it as opposed to other areas? What have we got to offer?
So I think the Midlands bid was particularly strong. I mean, the way this facility came about was Faraday decided there was a need for this type of facility in the UK. What Asia have got and what the UK hasn't got is they've already got battery manufacturers. Yep. So when product is being developed, they could take a line down, as an example, and run prototype product down that line. We haven't got that capability in the UK, so we needed this type of facility. I think what the West Midlands has got, it's got definitely technical expertise in the area. You know, it's got a good background of automotive expertise, and I think the other thing that this area does have has the potential customers in this area for this type of facility. So I think it was a very strong bid that was put into Faraday and the APC to win this project, and that was a bid by Coventry City Council, WMG, and the Coventry and Warwickshire LEP.
And we hear a lot about this from those organisations, but that shows presumably that partnership working that you get in this patch particularly does yield results.
Absolutely. I mean, this facility is testament to that partnership work, and this is the result.
Yeah. So you're obviously local. Tell us why you moved here. What was it? What did you do before, and what was the attraction of coming here?
Yeah. So my background's automotive. So before coming here, I was 31 years with Nissan up in the northeast of England. So I'm originally a northeastern lad. The last about 10 years of my time with Nissan, I was responsible for building the lithium-ion battery plant up in Sunderland, which supplies batteries for the Nissan Leaf. Yeah. So we started that in 2009. I remember the discussion very well. Even now, my old boss was a guy called Colin Law. He was quite laid back. He went on to be senior vice president in charge of Nissan in Europe, so fairly senior position. But he was fairly laid back and had a good sense of humour. And he said, Jeff Mr. Gone has decided that Nissan are going to build electric cars and we're going to build our own batteries, and you're in charge of the paint process in the factory. I said, yeah. And he said, this battery process sounds like it's a process. So paint's a process, this is a process, we've decided you're the man for the job.
Was that technical, was it? But I presume when you came to this, there weren't many people in the UK who had open battery plants.
Absolutely. I mean the battery plant up in Sunderland was the first gigascale factory in the UK and probably in Europe, and that's a 2 gigawatt plant. We started that back in 2009. We broke ground in 2010. We got that operational in 2012, and we localised the leaf from Japan into the UK, and started producing the batteries locally. And then I ran that facility till I came here in 2018 to build this facility.
And is it just automotive batteries, or is it batteries across other industries?
Phase 1 Faraday was geared around automotive generally, because that's where we see the initial need coming from for all the batteries. But no, it isn't just automotive. This facility is here to support all sectors. So it'll support automotive, it'll support aerospace, rail, marine, stationary storage. We'll support general industrial applications, etc.
And how's it been received by the market? Who are your customers?
Well, I cannot talk about individual customers, because with all of our customers we sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. But what I can say is, we're getting to the stage where we're doing final commissioning now, with most of the facility to be operational towards the end of this year. We have seen some delays because of COVID.
Yep. And
obviously, when we just moved to this facility, when everything locked down in March, but we've had terrific support from our suppliers, and we've managed to continue on installing the equipment, etc. The remainder of the kit is still in Asia, so most of it will be ready end of this year, with the exception of pouch cell manufacturing. That arrives end of February, and we'll commission that in March. We've got 4 orders already, so before we finish the facility, we've got 4 orders from customers, and they vary in terms of what they're after. Some are after consultancy and expertise from us. Others want to build modules or packs, and we've talking to some companies who's interested in building cells. The other aspect is we have the full suite of battery manufacturing capability in this facility. So we have electrode manufacturing, we have cell manufacturing, 2 formats, cylindrical and pouch. We have module and pack. Where electrode is really interesting is it starts to fetch the supply base in. So you could have suppliers coming in and using the electrode facility to try new powders and make cells, and then go and present those cells to OEMs. And
obviously, you talk about specialist fields. What's the recruitment process been like? How have you managed to do it? How many people have you taken on board so far, and what will be, when you're in full production or full operation, what will be the numbers?
Yeah, we're getting towards full headcount for launch. So full headcount for launch is around 90 people, and we're about at 87 now, so we haven't got many to go. We have took a few specialists from the battery industry, but to be honest, they've been few and far between. There isn't a big pool of battery talent in the UK, because the industry is still developing.
Are we behind? Are we behind our competitors, if we're being honest, in terms of Asia and parts of Europe?
Absolutely behind Asia. The whole of Europe's got to catch up with Asia. So we are starting from a point where we have a low talent pool in the UK and in Europe. And we've got to develop that talent pool going forward. So what we've done is we've taken people with maybe not the battery skills, but skills in the right areas, and we've developed that battery skills over the couple of years while we've been developing this project, to the point where we now have a good pool of battery skill around this area.
And how many people? You'll be 90 odd? Will you
so we've got 87 now,
yeah.
and we'll go to around about 90 for launch, and then we'll see what the use of the facilities like, and we'll grow it from there.
And what's it been on a practical basis? You know, a lot of people tuning in today will be running business. What's it been like onboarding people during COVID? I mean, how has everybody who is employed here has been in at some stage, I take it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it has been quite difficult. I mean, most of the staff for the support functions we had on board before lockdown hit. Yeah. So unfortunately, they just got to the facility. We just came to the facility in March. At the end of March, the first lockdown came, so we had to send a lot of people home.
Because you were new, were you equipped for them to work from home, or did you have to?
So the IT department have done a sterling job actually in terms of getting us up and running and working from home. So we ended up with really just the engineering team on site that had to manage our suppliers, putting the equipment in. Yeah. The rest of the support functions were mainly at home, and then we had the management team sort of rotating through, so we had management cover. And that's how we've managed to keep the sort of numbers at the minimum, but still allow progress down on site.
We read a lot about Tesla and about Elon Musk. How much has his sort of disruption forced the Western industry to get up to speed and to be moving at the pace it's moving at now?
My opinion, I'm not so sure it's Elon Musk. I think everybody looks to see what Elon Musk's doing, and you know, when Elon Musk got his battery day and he decided he was going to do these big cylindrical cells, the bigger ones that are out now, with 21700 now, and he's going to do these 40mm cells. Everybody's starting to look at that, you know, so he's a bit of a leader, and others are followers. But I think the real thing that's going to drive this push to electrification is the regulations coming in Europe from the governments. I mean, the UK government have now announced no ICE from 2030 and no hybrid from 2035. Yeah. That's going to drive the large automotive manufacturers to change over to electric, which is going to drive the battery industry. And
then UK-wide, we come to manufacturing, and obviously the Midlands is expected to wish to host a gigafactory. Yeah. So the gigafactory is production, whereas this is more development. What are the chances and what are the attributes that we've got to host it in this area?
I think if you look at the demand in the UK, so the demand in the UK is probably by about 2035 about 8 gigafactories. Yeah. So when I say gigafactory, I'm talking about 20 or 30 gigawatt hours per year. Mm-hmm. You know, not the sort of. This is if it was a manufacturing facility and we were set up as a manufacturing facility, probably do about 2 gigawatts. And this is 3 football fields. Right. These gigafactories are 30 football fields, so they're sizable facilities. So there's definitely going to be the demand in the UK going forward. What tends to be happening is the factories are sort of gravitating around the automotive manufacturers. So you know, we've got some significant automotive manufacturers in the Midlands. So I think there's a good chance that at some point we would get a gigafactory in the region, and we'll get gigafactories in the UK because the demand's going to be there going forward.
Do you have to encourage staff here to drive electric vehicles, or by the nature? I mean, I've never seen a car park with so many charging points. Yeah. or are they interested anyway, and most of them do?
They're very interested in driving electric vehicles, and one of the regular asks we get from them is, can we sort of look at some sort of scheme where we have a salary sacrifice scheme so they can drive EVs. So they're very interested. I mean, part of the reason a lot of the staff came here is because they wanted to get into this industry, and they're really interested in EVs as a whole.
Brilliant, Jeff. Well, thank you very much again for hosting us tonight. We'd like to come back, hopefully when more normal times return, and host a physical meeting here, if that would be okay, so everyone else can see what's a magnificent facility.
Absolutely, love it.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that. A few years ago, you might remember we heard from Kate Tague, who'd recently been installed as the principal of the WMG Academy for Young Engineers. She told us all about the aims for the organisation, what it was trying to do, the different mould-breaking way it was educating young people. Well, now we're going to hear, if it's worked, through one of its graduates, Omeah Hancox, who now works for JLR.
I chose Jaguar Land Rover because I'm the kind of person that likes to be really good at what I do, and I like to try and be the best at it. So it only made sense for me to join a company who's the best at what they do, which is making cars that are revolutionary across the world.
Working here is definitely not what I thought it would be. There is so many different opportunities to get involved with.
In my first week, I got taken on the track in an F-type prototype going at top speed. It was honestly amazing. I find it a very exciting, very dynamic place where any development and changes can very easily influence how society works and how we live with the environment.
I think the perfect way to sum up working at Jaguar Land Rover is with ACEs. This is autonomous, connected, electrified and shared. Autonomous meaning autonomous driving, connected car allowing cars to communicate with each other, electrified powertrain and shared ownership of cars.
In my second year of uni, I had the opportunity to take part in a Women in Engineering Day at Jaguar Land Rover. That day inspired me because I met a lot of amazing women who've gone to like a director level.
There's a graduate network which I joined when I started, and they put on different events for graduates. Throughout my time at Jaguar Land Rover, I've made loads of great friends.
I didn't quite get the heritage when I first started. Everyone would speak about the Defender, and I see the work and passion people have. You can see that it's a pretty important honour really to work at Jaguar Land Rover.
I wouldn't call myself a car person, but it really interested me when I joined at Jaguar Land Rover that they're not just interested in just making cars, it's about a lot of different types of technology and a lot of really exciting new things in the future.
Omeah, welcome. Now, we've heard from your head teacher. It's the time now to tell us the truth about really what the Academy is like. Tell us first of all about your background. Do you come from a long line of engineers or not?
Well, my granddad worked for Jaguar, and he worked on the prototype of the E-Type in the 1960s.
Right.
And then my father started at 18 at Jaguar.
Right.
He was in the wood shop at Browns Lane, and now 34 years later, he's still there,
Right.
but he's at Solihull in production control. So yeah, it does go back, especially I wanted to keep Jaguar in the family and be the first female in my family to go there.
Excellent. And why the Academy? Because there's the more conventional route of going through uni or what have you in a graduate programme. What appealed to you particularly about that form of education?
Well, at the school I was at previously, when it came to taking your GCSE options, there wasn't an option to do engineering, which was quite big for me. And then just down the road, 5 minutes away, was this new engineering academy. So I knew that's where I want to go. And it was partnered with Jaguar Land Rover. So I knew I'd be close and knit with them, doing projects with them. And it also had the workshop in there, where you can learn hands-on skills, make things, and things that I actually made I took to my interview at Jaguar, and they loved it. They loved that I'd had that hands-on already in a workshop, whereas I wouldn't have got that in my previous school.
And was that something that was in you anyway? Were you a sort of practical maker of things before, or was it the Academy that brought that out in you?
Well, I do the IKEA flat pack furniture with my dad, and I got on okay with them, but no, I'd never really been in a workshop.
You open up a big market for your services if you're good at the flat pack. So you're quite practical.
Yeah, I get on well, and but I'd never really been in a workshop before. So at WMG, that was my first experience, and I actually really enjoyed it.
And were you a car person? Do you like driving and what have you?
Oh my gosh, I love cars. My dad and I, we just have this passion, and if we see a car, we're like, oh my God, look at that Bentley. You know, look at that. I just have that passion inside me.
Yeah, and what about your mum? Does she just have to put up with this?
Oh God, don't start. Every year we're getting a new car, she's like, Omeah, I'm sick of it. She doesn't understand it, but we get itchy with our cars. We want to move on. We're both the same.
Is she listening tonight?
Yeah, she's
okay. You have our sympathy. and how was it when you went there? Because just explain to people how it differs from going to a normal secondary school.
Okay, well, it's kind of the same. For me, it was quite a big difference because I came from an all-girls school, and then I went to a school which was 80% boys. So that was quite a change. But also, it's different timing. So it was 8:30 till 4:30, which is quite a bit longer than a normal 9 till 3.
Is that to mimic what you'll do once you get into the world of work?
Well, I think I'm not really sure why they did that, but definitely did really help me, because going from just 9 till 3 to then now I do shift work.
Yeah.
So it did help me have that longer period of time, and I think that was a really good idea from WMG.
And you have to go sort of in formal work attire and things like that?
Yeah,
don't
there
you?
was no sort of uniform as such. It was business formal wear, which I felt helped you feel more professional, helped you feel more as if you're not in school, you're at half place of work, half school.
And what about the other cohort? Did some of them struggle, or did everybody adapt to it? Presumably they'd all got the same sort of drivers as you in going in the first place.
No, I think everybody adapted, because as much as it's quite different from school, it's still school. So everybody sort of just, I think, got in really well, because it's still school, you're still with your lessons. It was different because sometimes there'd be classrooms of up to 60,
right,
which is quite different from your normal 30, but there would be 2 or 3 teachers in there. And I felt that was really good, because if the ratio from teacher to pupil was bigger, rather than there being 1 to 30, it would be 2 to 3 to 60. So I felt that helped me.
And what about the mix of subjects? Obviously you concentrate on, or you do a lot of engineering. How does that balance up compared to the other subjects?
Well, you still do your normal conventional subjects. I did a language as well and geography, but there was engineering design and engineering manufacture. So I can't really, it's a long time ago now, but you still do your normal lessons, but I think there was 4 hours of engineering a week.
Right. And what about as you were getting to the end of that, your time there, and you see friends going off to uni and what have you, was your head never turned to think, have I done the right thing, or were you just...
No, I knew uni was not for me. I was quite eager to get into a job and earn money, and I knew with an apprenticeship it's a win-win, because you're learning, you're getting your qualifications, but then you're also on a wage. And I just think with uni, I couldn't have dealt with so much debt hanging over me. That would have really affected me.
And now you're earning while they're not, I suppose, which,
yeah.
which is a nice thing. So when it came to sort of interview time and Jaguar taking on people, how did that process work?
So it is quite a rigorous process. It's all online, well, the first stage until you pass. I think there was 4 stages, and there were psychometric tests. So it sounds worse than what it is. It's basically situations that they give you that you may be faced with when you're in your role, and you would just have to judge it, and you just answer the question how you would manage it.
So, and did you just apply per se, or is there a certain bit of Jaguar, a certain discipline of Jaguar that you wanted to go into?
No, you just apply for I applied for the advanced apprenticeship. That's when you're going from not a degree, and then you have to get the GCSE results that you are required, and then it's an online, and then you just go through all the stages, and then eventually it's the assessment centre, which is where you have your interview.
Right. And out of you mentioned the ratio of male-female within the academy. What about that Jag took on? Were there many other females, or was it mostly male, or how did that break
Well,
down?
it is still unfortunately male-dominated, but coming from a school that was male-dominated, it helped me just. I want a lot more women to try and get into engineering. It's something I'm quite passionate about.
Why isn't it 50-50? What do you think the factors are?
I think because obviously previous times in history it was a man's job, that stereotype, but I also feel that young women aren't given the opportunities to truly understand what the term engineer means. Whenever I've spoke to young women before in schools on open days, and I've had them before me, and they say, but I don't want to get dirty, I don't know anything about cars, I don't want to work in a workshop. And it frustrates me, because that's not all engineering is. And I say to them, but your phone, that's been engineered. That handbag, that's engineered. Makeup is engineered. Everything we use in our day-to-day lives is engineered. And they look at me and they're shocked. And it frustrates me, because I feel that I want to do more for young women to truly understand what it is, and it's not just a man in a hard hat. Everything we use is engineered, and there's, like, at Jaguar, when women get in their cars, not just at Jaguar, but day to day, when women get in their cars and their nails, they scratch the door handles, they want women to, oh no, in design, the handle needs to be different. We need to do, there's things that women can put that sometimes men can't.
You obviously need your father out there brainwashing all these youngsters to come into engineering. So what's your job title now? Where are you based and what do you do?
So I'm in event vehicle operations, and that's at Fen End. And I'm training to be a vehicle technician. So we look after the event vehicles, the show cars, and if anything needs repairing, we do that, or trim needs changing, that's what we're there for.
Fine. And what's the sort of progression? You like to stay in that, or do they move you around the company to experience different disciplines?
Well, you get put on placements in your apprenticeship. So I've been to Gaydon in the design shop where I designed a new seat and actually learnt the sewing machine, did it all myself and recreated the seat, and that was really interesting. So they do move you about, they like you to get a feel for the whole areas of the business. But when you complete your apprenticeship, if you get the job role, you have to stay in your area for 18 months.
Right.
And then you can go on and apply if you want to go further.
And what area would you like to end up in? Boardroom obviously, but apart from that, what's the progression?
I'd love to work with apprentices. I'd love to help them. I've walked in their shoes, especially young women. I'd like to, you know, share my story and be there for them. But I've also got a flair for design. I love design, and when I designed that seat in Gaydon, I really enjoyed it. So there's a few options. We've
had a question in from someone, I don't know whether you know the answer to this, and somebody from Kanishka saying, does JLR support international students through scholarships? Are there many international staff that you work with?
I think so. Do they mean coming, obviously they've come to the UK, so yeah, definitely, and obviously we've got plants all over the world, so if you're bilingual that would really help.
Okay, and do you get one to take home on the weekends, Jag? Or not?
Unfortunately not, no. Right. But when you're a manager, you do.
Right, and so your message to others would be, when you're getting to what sort of time did you have to decide whether you went down conventional education or to the academy?
Well, there's no rush. I mean, people come in at 25. I was the youngest. I got taken on at 15, but then didn't start till 16 in September. And there were people that had degrees. There were people that had been working for JLR before, and then there was me that just had GCSEs. So go in whenever you feel ready.
Right. Well, please stay and listen to the rest of the afternoon, because our last guest started at Jaguar in 1977 and then ended up running an automotive firm.
Wow.
So perhaps you can follow in her footsteps as well.
Hopefully.
But Omeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
At the last event, we heard about the co-working space that's been created in Leamington Spa called 1 Mill Street. Since then, it's emerged that Mediatonic, a leading games developer, is moving into that building, but also eventually bringing and creating 60 jobs with it. Again, increasing the reputation and the role of Silicon Spa. We are an internationally renowned cluster for digital gaming and digital technology in general. The man overseeing the move, having to make it happen again in very trying circumstances when you're trying an office move and recruiting staff, is the person today with easily the coolest job title, the VP of Art, is Phil Warner. Phil, welcome. You haven't seen that before?
No, I've seen the footage before,
Right.
but yeah, I hadn't seen the
You didn't
the
feature?
reel.
You weren't the cartoon character with his head on his desk looking exasperated?
No, I try and stay off camera if I can. I don't know what I'm doing here.
I'm learning now, it's always wise, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about Mediatonic, because in the sector, they're quite a well-established, it's odd to say an older company, but tell us about the formation of them.
Yeah, so we celebrated our 15th anniversary this year, actually. I've been with them for about 5 years. But yeah, we kind of started off just at the advent of social media, really, and making flash games for companies and games that went on to some of the early social media platforms like MySpace, early Facebook and so on. And then as the mobile sector started to grow, free-to-play mobile gaming became a thing. We transferred across into there. And really in my time at the company over the last 5 years or so, we've kind of expanded into PC and console and next-gen console as well, while still keeping our toe very firmly in the mobile market as well. So we've got a great eclectic mix of games across most platforms now. So.
And explain where your bases are, because you said to me when we were chatting that you sort of have to follow these clusters as there is in Leamington. So where are you based?
Yeah, so the main HQ is in London. But we also have studios in Brighton, in Guildford, and we've got a studio over in Madrid as well, and then in the last month opening up in Leamington Spa.
Yeah. And tell us what was the need to open in Leamington, and why did you choose Leamington particularly?
Yeah, I guess like the two things that are valuable to a games company really are the IP that you create, and that's very much reliant on the staff that you're hiring to come up with the ideas and so on, and the staff themselves. And when you're fishing in the same talent pool, really, over and over again, there's only so many people that you can attract. I think a lot of our other locations are based, like the London one, where we've got 270 odd people working, in a city location, very prime location. But actually, a lot of our staff are very young, straight out of university and so on. It's an expensive place to live. So I think somewhere like Leamington, it's obviously got its games cluster, which is a talent pool in itself, but it's also quite attractive to staff that we already have who perhaps they're looking to start a family or move house and so on. And, countryside, beautiful place to live and work. So yeah, it's something new to our portfolio, really.
And does each base operate in and of itself? So are you looking for staff of all disciplines for Leamington?
Yeah, we are. So we actually just operate as one big company, really. So obviously now we all work from home, so you wouldn't know where people are sat. But even when we're in the office, we have people from Madrid just dialing in and so on. So all the projects are shared between all the different locations, and the same would be true of Leamington.
And just give us some figures if you can. When you create a game, which are your most popular games?
Well, by far was our latest release, really, which was Fall Guys, which we released back in August. It's really put us on the map. We're the kind of company that kind of, we produce very successful games. We've never really shouted too much about our successes, but I think with Fall Guys, it just went global. It's really taken off. Within the first month, it sold 10 million copies on PC, became the most downloaded PlayStation Plus game of all time. So it massively...
unexpectedly successful?
Yeah,
to that scale?
Yeah, to that scale, definitely.
Yeah.
It's passed our highest estimates by 6 to 7 times, really. So as a company, that's a challenge in itself. Yeah. We had to pivot everything, all of our plans, ramping up staff. I think we've hired over 100 people since lockdown started. So, and a lot of that is since August, really. So. And that's a lot of onboarding people and trying to do it remotely as well. It's quite a challenge.
Yeah. And is that, does Mediatonic make its money from people purchasing the game? And because obviously there are developers who develop for people who own the games.
Yeah, sure.
This is your game, your IP?
Yeah, it's our IP. So historically we've made a mixture of games. So a mixture of kind of collaboration. Some people would say work for hire type projects, but we tend to co-invest in projects. So. But yeah, our goal has always been to make more and more original IP, and it's something that we've done all along. We've kind of had a really good mix of projects, but actually, you know, the success of something Fall Guys is, to the extent of Fall Guys, is just going to accelerate our ability to invest in our own ideas and our own products.
And the income comes from what, advertising or people purchasing it in the first place?
Yeah, so I mean, Fall Guys is a relatively cheap game. You know, it's not a £50 game. I think it's £16, £17, something like that. So we do make good money off sales, but actually there are in-app purchases as well. Yeah. And it's not the sort of thing that you have to pay to win, or you know, some of these games. It's all cosmetic. It's all fun. It's all low cost, and we just believe in having quite a positive player experience, really. So if we want people to buy something because they want to buy it, and we want them to enjoy it once they have it. So,
what's the shelf life, if you like, for want of a layman's term, the first edition of the game? When does the next version of it have to come out? What's the shelf life like?
Yeah, so we're hoping to run the game as an ongoing product, really. So. It's a bit different from when I started in the industry, where you kind of ship a game and it goes in a box and it goes on the shelf, and that's it. People buy it for 3 months and then they're on to the next thing. So we're releasing regular season updates, so you get new levels and so on that go into the game, and it just keeps it fresh for everybody. You know, for us as an art team, as a development team, it means coming up with new concepts all the time. So the game is constantly evolving. But the hope is that you just build a community, and we've got a fantastic community. I think we managed to grow it. Our Twitter following alone, we grew to 1.5 million people within weeks, which was amazing, because we could sit with a community.
You said handling that level of growth is very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. But we could sit in a meeting and talk about a new feature of the game, and by that afternoon, the community manager had it trending on Twitter. It's incredible marketing power. So yeah, you know, that isn't new to us. Like, we've always done that, but the scale to which we're doing it now is pretty new to all of us.
Does that ramp up the pressure ultimately, though, that the next game has got to be bigger than this game? Is that?
I guess so, but I think...
Not that I want to ruin your moment of glory, but yeah.
Yeah, we've always overlapped projects, and we've got other projects on the go, unannounced stuff as well. But yeah, you know, Mediatonic always wanted to be successful commercially, but actually they want to do it in the right way, in the way that they want to do it, which is a focus on creativity and a focus on fresh ideas and so on. Like the whole name Mediatonic, tonic is supposed to be something uplifting and something that makes you feel good. So I think the real value in the company is our ability to create new ideas and new IPs, and that's something we've always done, really. So yeah, there's new stuff underway. There is pressure to do the next thing, and it's always a challenge to find lightning in a bottle. That's what we're looking for. But if you build the right culture and you build a creative culture, then there's just a lot of ideas naturally getting bounced around and getting developed, and sometimes they take years even to come to fruition, but the market will slightly shift and an idea will kind of come into focus, and all of a sudden we can get a lot of talent behind it, really.
And you explained to me you were living here already when you moved up, so what was your history?
Yeah, so I started off back in the last century. That makes me feel old. Just making kind of recreational flight sims, really, but I came up to work for the behemoth up here, which was Codemasters. It's where it all started. It's where Silicon Spa kind of started. And I was very happy there. I stayed there for 15 years. Before it just came time to move on, really. So I then moved to another local company, Rebellion Games, who are based in Oxford, but they've got a studio up here as well in Warwick now. Before getting encouraged to go and have a look at Mediatonic, and as soon as I opened the door, it just felt very fresh. It felt very different to me. So yeah, I took the plunge. I stayed up here. I commute down to London every day, which is actually remarkably quick. I can get to the office quicker than most people who live in London, you know, on the outskirts of London.
And the Codemasters thing is interesting, is it? Because as you say, that company really, is it totally responsible for the spawning, at least, of Silicon Spark?
Yeah, I wouldn't say totally, but very, very influential. So back in the 80s, really, there were a number of brothers. I don't know why it's all brothers, but they were the Darling brothers who set up Codemasters, and the Stamper brothers who set up Rare, who are just up the road in Twycross. The Oliver twins were based in originally working in Codemasters, and they split off to set up Blitz games. And you've got the Kingsleys who set up Rebellion as well. So really, there was just this cluster.
Have you not got a brother?
I've got two brothers. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I don't know what we did wrong, but yeah. So there was just this cluster of activity really that was all pretty successful. And from there, obviously, companies grew, and as companies grow, staff get ambitious, and just everything kind of spun out of there. And there's been an awful lot of small companies who have grown from there. Most of the companies in Leamington are either headed up, or a lot of the leaders within those companies are people I work with. Some of them I hired as artists back in Codemasters.
And is it quite a small industry, as in terms of people have worked for a number of companies, but incestuous, so they all know each other? Is it like that?
Yeah, it is very much so, and I'm quite excited at the moment because there's a little cluster of companies who are coming into Leamington who actually come from a different, they've been brought up in different towns and different cities and so on. So we're coming in.
So that'll bring a different ethos, different culture,
I think so.
Which must be healthy.
Yeah, I think the gene pool within the town is going to change quite considerably with the likes of Sumo Digital and Electric Square coming in, and ourselves, all with quite different cultures to what's been brought up.
That's interesting. We've had a couple of questions. Mike Ballinger said there are so many games available. Is there a limit? As new games come in, do old ones die off, or does it just keep growing?
Yeah, they do die off, and I think that's healthy, really. I guess there are, the perennial successful games who manage to keep going year on year, and that's really great. As a creative, I like creating new things. I like the challenge of new things. So, I love to see games that are successful, and maybe after a few years I get a chance to perhaps move on and look at other stuff. I'm sure the bosses of most of the games companies would very much like their games to live as long as possible, really, and rightly so.
And somebody tweeted in, Rob Milne, saying, has the sort of nature of the organisation had to change with the success of the latest game? Has it had to become more corporate? Have you had to bring new rules and checks and those sorts of things in? Has it had to, without being patronised, grow up a little bit because of the success of it? Yeah,
I think we were on that path anyway, really. We'd already grown pretty considerably over the last 3 or 4 years. We're still pretty chilled out, compared to most companies that kind of size. We ride scooters around the office, and I've seen the odd pogo stick race and so on. So there's a lot of fun in the office. We believe in play. I think play, it's our business, but actually it brings the teams together as well, and it brings disparate groups from within the studio who perhaps wouldn't come across each other. I think through play, through a very average football team, or playing board games with people and so on. Actually, that's an integral part of our culture, and that will never change.
What's it like, and I ask this very respectfully,
yeah.
You started in the industry in the early days. As one gets older and older and older, how is it to keep up with the youngsters? Do you have to keep, do you end up as the 50-year-old bloke on the skateboard, or how does it sort of work?
Yeah, I'm not on a skateboard anymore.
No, that's right.
My daughter's on a skateboard. No. I keep trying to resist, but I
mean, do you have to, because obviously you tend to lose ties perhaps with younger culture the older you get. Do you have to actively do it, or the fact that you're in that industry means you're interested in it anyway?
Yeah, I like to think that there's not a huge difference.
We haven't done a poll amongst your workforce, by the
way.
No.
Don't worry. I mean, we do get these horrific moments where I talk about someone like Patrick Swayze, and like half the office are like, who? And it's like, So yeah, occasionally I'm reminded of just how old I am, especially if I show where I started in games, which was on a black and white telly, and a game system that basically just played Pong. So yeah, I think there is an age difference. I'm like the third oldest within Mediatonic. I'm older than the bosses of the company even. So, but yeah, that's good. The cultures change, gaming changes. There's all sorts of games genres now that I've never played, and it's great to have people on the shop floor really who have a thorough understanding of where the industry is now.
And just lastly, will the Silicon Spar thing, as far as you're concerned, keep growing? Are conditions here good for that economically, for it to carry on?
Yeah, I don't see why not. There's some really exciting stuff going on with the Creative Quarter. The council is trying to kind of get going, coinciding with the Commonwealth Games. It's heading to Birmingham in 2022, so that's really good. There's a number of companies setting up on the outskirts of town. I think as the creative quarter developments and things like Mill Street come online, actually these creative spaces, there's a huge appetite for people to move into them. As an industry, you know, we make projects that take two, 3 years to make sometimes, and the nature of that is it can be quite boom and bust. You know, your needs for staff. I think once you reach a certain size, like we have, and the likes of Codemasters and Playground Games and so on, you can cater for that by balancing people, taking them off one project and putting them on another. But I think with the smaller companies where they're just running one project, actually having a number of other studios around them is really healthy as well, because as one is hiring, another one maybe is letting staff go and so on. So for the industry, that's a healthy setup.
Brilliant. Well, sure, we've got lots of people Googling the name of your games now who are listening. Thank you very much for joining us, and best of luck with the new venture as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now to our final guest. When Linda Jackson got a job as a temporary account clerk at was probably in those days known as the Jag in 1977, it was the first step on a road to becoming one of the most powerful females in global automotive and running one of the best known car companies in the world. Brilliant. That's great, thanks. Linda, good evening.
Good evening, hello.
Good. I was just hoping this didn't sound too Eurovision, so I'm glad there wasn't too long of a gap. So obviously I described that journey that started at Jag and ended up with you running Citroën. Take us back to those times when you started that first role. You couldn't have had any idea where your career would have taken you.
No, because to be honest with you, it was a holiday job.
Was it?
I was going to go to university, and I wanted to earn some money before I went to university. And my uncle worked at Jaguar, so he got me a job over the summer, and I enjoyed it. I was there for like 2 months, and I didn't do a great deal of work, to be honest with you, but I managed to see lots of areas, and I was just taken, a little bit like Omeah said, I was just like passionate for cars, and I just wanted to stop, and 40 odd years on, I've never ever left the industry. I just love it. So it was by accident that I joined Jaguar and got into the automotive business, and then obviously worked my way up through various things, starting in finance and then sales and marketing and what have you. And I've never regretted that decision to not go to university at that point. I mean, obviously, I went back and I was sponsored by Rover to do an MBA at Warwick University, so I remained in the Coventry area again. No, I've never regretted it. I love it. Still do.
What sort of place was Jaguar in those days? Vastly different to what it is now, obviously.
Oh, vastly different. I mean, it was. If you imagine you were going down the line now, and if you went down Jaguar or Land Rover or any of our plants, it's, you know, a lot of it is automated. It wasn't then. It was people with screwdrivers and hammers and things like that building cars. And just to go back to what one of the first jobs I did, which was to calculate how much it cost us to make a manufacturing cost to make a Jaguar. And there were no computers in that sense. So I was adding every part up on a 13-column analysis paper. And so I had pages and pages of parts that I was calculating with a calculator. And obviously then they were sent off on a batch run to the computer. So they were the times that were completely different. And I suppose the other thing that was different is, and maybe it hasn't changed so much that I would like, is that there were no women, hardly any women. And now there are more, luckily. But as Omeah said, there's still not enough, and we need to encourage more women to go into it.
In those days, Jaguar, those two figures, did they turn out the right way around? Was it costing more to manufacture than they were selling? Because Jaguar wasn't in the best place in those days, was it?
I don't think I would reveal any secrets to you. It wasn't going in the right direction. Right. And it wasn't my calculation either that was doing it wrong.
And did you work out that you wanted to stay in that industry, or was it just that you gradually moved up and it was a natural progression?
No, I decided, well, I mean, it was a bit of both, really. I mean, obviously, it was a natural progression and I was doing well and I enjoyed it. But no, I love the automotive industry. Why? Because I think, you know, you're selling something that people are buying with emotion. You know, it's a sexy product. People are buying it because they want to say something about themselves. And 99% of us do that. Maybe 1% don't. They want to get from A to B. But a majority of us are buying something and they want to personalize it and buy a car because it says something about yourself. So I really like that idea of the fact that it's a great product. At the same time, I also like the fact that it's very customer related. So, you know, you really do have to take note of what customers want and the trends of customers, etc. It's not just about engineering a car or designing a car, it's about designing and engineering the car for that customer. And I think that whole aspect of it, I find just fascinating. And of course, it becomes even more fascinating now because it's widening into, there's so many things with digitalization, connectivity, autonomous cars, electrification. I mean, you know, I think, you know, as I say, I've been in this industry a long, long time. And I think that what's happening now in the industry and will happen in the next 10 years is probably more than happened in the past 30 years. That's how different and how quickly we're having to change and adapt. And that's exciting. That's really exciting.
And we'll come back to it, and changing due to the sort of building that we're sitting in, with electrification presumably being key in future years.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, Jeff talked, I think you asked him the question as to why is it so important to build batteries, etc., etc. And obviously it's because at the moment we are completely dependent on Asian manufacturers, Asian suppliers to supply us with batteries, which is why, of course, it's so important to set up these areas, like, for example, in the UK, and also we've recently signed and developing an area, a similar type of area in Europe. But the other thing is that the fact of, as Jeff said, is that the regulations that are being imposed, which are totally right to protect the planet, mean that we have to move towards electrification. And you know, if you look at by 2030, I think virtually every market in Europe and certainly across the world will be saying, maybe not quite the States yet, but certainly in Europe, we'll be saying that there are no diesel and petrol cars, and we'll all be driving around in electric. So, you know, all manufacturers have to meet certain requirements. We have to meet the levels of CO2 already now. I mean, PSA were actually the leader in terms of reaching our objectives, and in fact below the objectives we've been set. But everybody has to do that, otherwise you are imposed penalties. And of course, that's devastating for a company. So it's leading us that way, but it also puts pressure on other parts of the infrastructure, because we can make cars, we can make electric cars, but we need all that infrastructure to be out there. So you need places where you can to charge your car, etc., etc. And that's not quite moving at the same pace, I don't think. Certainly the impression I get, certainly here in Europe, in mainland Europe, and I think it's true for the UK, is that infrastructure needs to speed up. Otherwise, we're all going to have electric cars, but we're not going to be able to charge them in many places.
Trust me, there's hundreds of charges here per car. Just your LinkedIn is really interesting to follow your career, and at one stage it just says 21 years, various roles in automotive. So just talk us through your ladder of progression from Jaguar and then through to Rover.
Okay, so the very first job I had was in invoice processing, which I had a very complicated job, absolutely essential, and you could say it was very manual in the sense of I had to match a good inwards note with an invoice. So I matched them and then stapled them together, and then they moved on to be paid. So I started in accounts, and I moved in various things in terms of accounting. I then moved into what we call model line profitability, which is the reference I made to Jaguar, which was calculating how much our cars cost us and therefore how much money we were making. I then also did a tour. I spent some time at Land Rover at Solihull in the factory, in finance in the factory, in product development, and then I moved into sales and commercial, so sales and marketing. And I did pricing or how we price cars, etc. And then I got the opportunity to go as finance director in France for MG Rover and Land Rover, because at the time they were all joined together. So I was there for a little while, and then I became.
Go on. No, I was just going to say, what was that like? Because having been based locally and brought up in this area, to suddenly move abroad, what was that like as a hurdle? What was it like linguistically? What was it like culturally?
It was a complete change. It was back in 1998, and I had done French at school, so I done A-level French. But quite honestly,
that's one thing asking where the boulangerie is in a textbook. It's another thing talking about corporate finance in French, presumably.
Absolutely, and therefore I had to learn a complete new vocabulary about balance sheets and all of those various things. So it was a real culture change, and in fact, back in 1998, it was a big culture change as well, because France has changed dramatically, and it's hardly any different in the way that we work at all now. But back then, it's a long time ago. I remember my first meeting, and I set the meeting, and I said it's going to be generalisation. It's a bit of a caricature, but I said it would be at 10 o'clock, and we got this agenda. Well, nobody arrived at 10 o'clock. At 10:05, they started to drift in with a cup of coffee in their hand. And then I started on agenda item number 1, but then they were on agenda item number 6. It was a complete disaster, really. And I sort of realised that you can't, it's a lesson, is that you can't impose your culture on somebody else. You have to find the best way to work around it. And quite honestly now, it's quite a nice mixture of, sort of British pragmatism with French creativity, I always say. So it was an enormous culture change. So I had to learn the language, I had to learn a different way of working. And of course I was living there as well. So it was fun, but it was hard work.
And how long did it take you to sort of, was it a question of you getting used to life there or them getting used to you?
I think it was a bit of both, really. And to be honest with you, when you're working at that level, I was finance director, I didn't have time really to settle myself in and say, okay, I can go along like this for about a year. I hadn't got that choice. So you're immediately thrown into it, and you just have to have a very steep learning curve, basically.
And I take it you were approached, you were headhunted for when you first joined Citroën. Is that how it worked?
Well, yes, it was towards the end of the very sad story of Rover, and I was actually headhunted to be finance director of Citroën in the UK. And in fact, I left Rover about 3 months before they went bankrupt and collapsed. And I was finance director for Citroën from around about 2005 up to about 2010. And then I was asked to go to France to work as a finance director in France for the French market. And then 2010, I was asked to come back to head up the national sales company for Citroën in the UK, which I did for 4 years. And then round about 2014, January 2014, I got a phone call from Carlos Tavares, who we saw at the beginning of the film, who is the chairman of PSA, and basically asking me to come and see him, which obviously, in my mind, I thought to myself, my God, what have I done? Going to send me off wherever, I don't know, out to Mongolia or something. And in fact, it was possibly the Citroën job. It was just like that. So I've been very lucky in the way that things have happened. I've not, to be honest with you, had a career where I've planned every intricate detail. I've been very lucky that opportunities have come along.
And was it genuinely that much of a shock to you to be offered the job?
Well, it was, to be honest. I mean, obviously, I'd always said that I'd love to do that job, but I never thought I would get it. A, because I was British, I wasn't French. B, because, and perhaps it's wrong, but there had never been a woman heading up Citroën or indeed any of the brands. And therefore, I thought it was a bit of a long shot to be able to have that. And indeed, I'd only met Carlos once. He'd come over literally at the beginning of the January in 2014 to do a business review. And I hadn't seen him other than that. So yeah, the phone call was a bit of a shock. And to be honest with you, when he said to me, I'd like to do this job, you can tell that I like talking, but I was speechless for at least 30 seconds. My mouth sort of dropped, and I went, oh, okay, yeah. Well, yeah, I'd love to do it. And to be fair to him, he told me to go away and talk to my family, because the job at this level becomes not a job that you spend 100% of your time, you spend 200% of your time like this. So you have to make sure that your family are with you and on board. So basically, he gave me the weekend to think about it, and I rang him on the Monday, and that was it.
And it might be one thing having an English female finance director at Citroën or at Rover down the sort of pecking order slightly. What was the reaction to you getting that post?
Well, I don't know whether I think people actually, to be honest with you, were more interested in the fact that I was a woman as opposed to that I was British, I have to be honest with you. Right. Even the French press, once they realised that by then I could speak French, and I could speak French, which was an important part for them. To be honest with you, it was all about being a woman, and how do you manage people? Well, you manage people just like a man. I mean, it's no different. It's just your management style. So I had lots and lots of questions, and I think it was really about being a woman, and that's why I've done lots of things in terms of trying to encourage more women to come into this business, because I think there needs to be more women. We need the diversity. We do things slightly differently. I'm sure the men on there are saying, yes, they certainly do, but we do. And it's that nice combination of things that actually help us to create a great product. I always cite the example, for example, when you're in that sort of role, you obviously test a lot of new concepts, new vehicles. You're seeing the birth, if you like, the baby of your new car, all the way through from when it's first conceived all the way until it's actually launched. And when you first get into those cars, and we used to do a lot of test driving, what have you, I love cars, I love driving, I love the process of driving, etc., etc. But I always used to find it amusing, because the first thing I used to get into the car when I was test driving it was to actually see where I would put my handbag, where would I put the kids, how much space there was, did I feel safe, etc., as opposed to my male colleagues who are really sort of saying, wow, the torque is fantastic. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's actually matching the two means that you can have a great product. And so that was quite interesting. It was quite interesting seeing the reaction of some of the male engineers when, the first thing I talked about was, the connectivity, or where was the on and off button. It wasn't very ergonomically suited or whatever than it was in terms of the torque. So that was quite amusing, really. But I mean, it's diversity, and that's you need to welcome diversity.
And we heard Omeah speaking at the other end of her career, speaking about it earlier on. What's the picture like in France, in French industry, in terms of diversity and male-female ratios? Is it much the same as here? Is it an industry-wide global thing that we need more women in engineering?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no difference, to be honest with you. I mean, there may be 1 or 2 percentage points different in terms of the number of women in the industry, but overall, for example, when I was heading up Citroën at the beginning of this year, probably within the sales and marketing, there was probably 35 40% women, which is quite high. Whereas when you took PSA as a whole, which obviously includes the engineers, the factories, it was around about 20%. So you can see that obviously some areas have more women, etc., etc. So yeah, it's very, very important to encourage it. I remember that when I was launching the C5 Aircross, which is a recent car we launched, at the time, head of the factory at Rennes, where we were making the car, was a woman. And of course, that was a really great story. And we were encouraging the female engineers within the PSA to take note and see that as a model and what have you. And I think it's very, very important that we do that because, as Omeah said, this is not just about, people have a big perception that the car industry is very macho. Yes, of course, there are lots of males in it, but at the end of the day, we're talking about such different types of engineering, from digital engineering, connectivity, to mechanical engineering, electrical architecture, all of these things, and design. It means it's such a wide breadth and scope of things that people can do in this industry, and it's becoming more exciting as we go along, is that we need to encourage more women, and there's no reason why women can't be there as equal partners as men.
And before we wrap up, you talked about the difference when you first got over there of working practices maybe. Has internationalisation meant that they've come together a bit more, that they're more similar? There's less difference when you go to a board meeting in Britain as in France than when you started?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, as the company, as PSA became more international, we've changed dramatically, and we changed even more. For example, when we acquired Opel Vauxhall, because at that point, prior to that, all of the board meetings, and I was part of the board at that point, all of the board meetings were in French. Of course, and immediately that we acquired Opel, because we were obviously welcoming German colleagues who didn't necessarily speak French, we moved to English, whether it be board meetings or anything else. And of course, moving forward, hopefully, if the merger goes through with FCA Chrysler, then of course English and the predominance of the American market in their business, I mean, obviously the English is important. So yeah, internationalization has changed the business dramatically and has moved it to be very, very similar to Anglo-Saxon. But just talking about a little bit of change in terms of what's happening this year, that we found, and I'm sure it's true for the UK, is that we are moving more and more to working at home. You can see that I'm in my apartment at West of Paris, and I'm working from home and have done all day. And in fact, we're moving to a general rule that if you have the ability to work at home, then we're encouraging people to work from home. And indeed, we're encouraging them to maybe only go into the office in the future, once we can. It's not easy at the moment. But maybe you would only spend a day or a day and a half in the office, which would obviously be meeting people, etc. So I think what COVID has done for us as well, it's not just internationalization, but this year has changed us in terms of the way we work. And obviously, everybody, I think, is taking advantage of audios. I'm talking to you now. And I, came off a call to the States just a few moments ago. And that's what the world is nowadays, and I think it will change.
There's still vive la différence. I remember you will remember this gentleman's name, and I forget it, but a Frenchman who headed up Peugeot, well, certainly Peugeot in the UK, and I interviewed him, and the set question always at the end is, what's your favourite gadget? And every single MD I interviewed used to say computer, iPhone, and if you hadn't known he was French, you could have just read that answer, and it was his dehumidifier for his cigars. And I thought, I didn't know another CEO who would give that answer. Talk about internationalisation, and I don't want to get into the politics of it. You're sitting there with a French lens on Brexit and a French lens on the way the UK is approaching, the end of the year and the deadline. What's the sort of French or continental attitude of us withdrawing?
Well, I suppose, I guess, if I do it from a business point of view, clearly we're all a little bit frustrated because obviously stability is not there, so we don't know what's happening. If I take the Citroën business, for example, I mean, we import all of the vehicles into the UK. which means that should there be a hard deal and we have tariffs and what have you, then of course that's going to be very, very difficult for us to do business. And the whole point is the instability of not knowing what you're doing or how to prepare means that you've got plan A, plan B, plan C or whatever. So from a business point of view, it's quite difficult, obviously, to be able to plan, and you're sort of just waiting to see what will happen. Obviously, in the papers, it's very much about this instability, and at the moment, the papers, to be honest with you, are a little bit full of will there be a deal, won't there be a deal, are the French pushing it, are they not pushing it, it's fishery, and all of these sort of things, as you can imagine. So, to be honest with you, not wanting to get involved in the details of whatever it is, I think people just want to get stability. But clearly, free trade, no tariffs, all of those sort of things, ease of trade, because it's difficult to be able to do that. And even if you're producing like Jaguar Land Rover in the UK, you've obviously got suppliers coming in as well. And as everybody manages now is just in time, which means you literally just want the parts to be arriving as they go on the line. Any delay at the ports, etc., is ultra difficult for them. So I think everybody's a little bit frustrated.
So, just quickly, in a new role, what does the future hold for you? You're going to remain in the industry?
Oh, well, I hope so. I may have been in this industry a long time, and when you said that I started in 1977, it made me feel extremely old.
Sorry.
But no, don't worry about it. But yeah, I wanted to stop in this industry. Obviously, at the moment, I'm working on some work which I can't really go into, obviously, because otherwise I'll be gun jumping and all of those sort of things that I'm not allowed to do to talk about it. But obviously just preparing as to how we could potentially manage quite a lot of brands that we'd have in our group should the merger happen. So yeah, I'm hoping to continue. I'm definitely hoping to continue. I will continue in the industry for a little while yet, because as I say, I just enjoy it. And I think if you enjoy your job, spend a lot of time doing it, and if you enjoy it, then you should continue as much as you can until you don't enjoy it, and then you need to find a way out and do something else.
Well, brilliant. Thank you very much, Linda, for joining. As you know, Nick Erskine's been pursuing you to get you on to talk about your experience, and it really is fascinating. And hopefully, when you're back in the UK, and God willing, we've got physical meetings, you'll come and join us in person. But thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, thank you. Thanks to all our speakers this evening. We've let it run, hopefully, having managed to get Linda on. You wanted to hear the experience from somebody who is truly, from Coventry, a global leader in a global leading automotive industry. Thanks for listening. As I said, if you are tuning in for the first time, do please contact Nick Erskine. What a year. I don't know how many of you listening were with us at the Higgs Centre in March the 4th, when we were just beginning to learn, and in fact we heard from Stella Manzi from the Hospital Trust about this thing called COVID. We didn't know a lot about it. What a massive difference that has made to us. Coventry's hitting the headlines yesterday as hopefully the beginning of the end of COVID has hit home, with the first inoculations happening up at the hospital. We've got City of Culture in 2021, which will be bringing a big economic boost. So please do take an opportunity to head into the centre of Coventry, to the old cathedral ruins where Coventry Glides has been set up and is looking fantastic for ice skating. I did go up the other night and didn't venture onto the ice, but it really is a truly fantastic setting. Next week there is a Coventry University event called Creating Better Futures, where we're going to hear from the poet Lem Cisse. Again, it is an online event, and we'll be sending the details out with the follow-up calls for that. Thank you to everybody for tuning in tonight. Thank you very much to the Champions team and the team of producing this, and the team from the LEP who make this possible. We've had some great events, some great speakers. We're going to be back in early February again with probably another virtual meeting before we hope, as I say, God willing, we'll be able to meet in maybe March or April in person. I hope everybody has primarily a healthy and happy Christmas and a more prosperous 2021, but remember, there are an awful lot of positive things to say about Coventry and Warwickshire, so please tell somebody something positive about Coventry and Warwickshire today. Thank you very much.